there's nothing sweeter than giving your enemy a taste of their own medicine. After all, the axe may forget, but the tree always remembers. On that note, today we're going to be covering the top 25 ultimate payback scenes in the movies.
Stop.
You know,
Please stop. Hey.
Nina was extraordinary. So smart.
Help!
Weirdly smart.
Help! No.
Don't worry, I've sterilized everything. I really would have been a great doctor.
You're insane!
You know what? I honestly don't think I am.
Not a lot of people may have heard of this movie, but do give it a watch as it highlights some very important issues. What I found really interesting here was that the lead, Cassie, actually gets killed by the main villain, Al. However, she wasn't going to let her death stop her from getting payback for what happened to Nina, so she planned well in advance and made sure that the somewhat complicit Ryan got her messages loud and clear. She managed to get Al's own lawyer to get him convicted of the crimes he'd committed upon Nina and also Cassie herself, which ends the movie on a somber yet inspiring note.
No. Officer, please remove the bride.
I'm sorry, this is a
You have the
mistake.
right to remain silent.
Yes.
Give me the bow.
Yet, there wasn't much to enjoy about this movie, as it was more of a cheap remake of the original rather than an actual sequel. Lucius wanted revenge for the death of his wife, and then gets even more motivation when Macrinus takes his mom's life as well. Yeah, it's hard to see Denzel Washington as a villain, but this isn't his first rodeo in an antagonist role, so he does whatever he can with it. The payback that Lucius gets is a hard-fought one, as he almost loses to Macrinus, but luckily he got to use his secret skill, plot armor. To give this movie some credit, at least it made me realize how awesome the first Gladiator movie was.
What the do you want?
I want your liver. Your lungs.
This is my first time covering Wrath of Man, which is quite surprising, given how amazing it is in its context of payback for the lead son's death. After seeing Jan's face as he killed Dougie, Patrick Hill, aka Mason Hargreaves, goes on a whole mission to avenge his son. After all the chaos, he finally comes face to face with Jan, who would never have stood a chance had they gotten into a fist fight. So Mason takes the easy way out and shoots him in the exact same spots where Dougie was shot as well. That's cold AF, but is truly befitting of Jason Statham's aura.
His name was Dougie.
Just hold it right there. Hold it! I've killed women and children. And I'm here to kill you, little Bill.
Scoot Eastwood may have been the villain of the previous entry, but Clint Eastwood is a total badass. Having said that, let's take a moment to appreciate Gene Hackman for his contributions to the world of cinema. Rest in peace. Now, as far as payback goes, William Money likes to take it in extreme forms. So when he decides to get vengeance for Ned, we just know all those dudes at the salon were toast. It doesn't matter what the numbers or the odds might say, when you're up against a man of such caliber, all you can do is beg for your life. You know, the scene just prior to this, where he becomes the old William Money after taking the whiskey bottle and drinking again, it's such an amazing turn for the character. He hardens to steel and pushes the humanity out of himself one last time. It's somewhat understated in the film, but it is a powerful moment.
No sé.
Torture comes in various shapes and forms, and here it's in the form of Creasy cutting off Jorge's fingers so that he can figure out how to rescue Peter from her kidnappers. Now, Jorge's not the main villain of the movie, but he did have a hand in the kidnapping, and if it wasn't for him, Peter would probably have been safe at home. Of course, the biggest fool in all of this was her own dad, but I'm just here to cover the payback part of the movie, alright? Creasy is so cold and calculated in this scene that you wonder whether he's supposed to be a hero or the villain. Regardless, he gets what he wants and also ends Jorge without any questions asked. I guess that's kind of like the ultimate insult. No kid should ever have to experience what these young mutants had to go through in Logan, but that's what happens in universes like Fox's X-Men. Donald Pierce and his men got exactly what they should have gotten when the kids took them down with their powers, that too in super brutal fashion. Like, some of those deaths must have been super painful to experience, but those guys should have kept karma in mind when they were experimenting on their victims back in the day. Donald gets the worst punishment of them all, as he receives a traumatizing kind of combo attack wherein all the mutant kids take his life with all of their powers. Yikes, I sure hope these kids get some kind of therapy moving forward.
I have a message for Jimmy, that you are all going to die.
Quentin Tarantino sure has a knack for providing brutal justice, and Shoshana's revenge for her family members is the perfect example of it. After seeing what I consider to be Tarantino's best scene of all time, one could only wonder how she was going to get payback. It turns out that she did it quite nicely with the way she had the entire cinema burnt down. Yes, I know that Hans Landa was not in attendance, but his bosses were, and that's what counts. I would have actually placed this scene much higher, but the problem is that Shoshana doesn't even get to see her plans come to fruition because of her getting shot by Zola. Well, at least her recording gets to laugh like an evil maniac in front of her victims, which include Hitler himself. Yes, he was actually assassinated by an excessive display of bullets, but it was the cinema setting that made it happen in the first place.
What are you gonna do? Come on. What are you gonna do, big boy?
When it comes to getting justice, some would say that you need to be fair even with the person who was in the wrong. In the case of Pete, that dude was more wrong than the word could ever mean. So I'd say that Corey Lambert still went easy on him despite delivering a brutal kind of payback wherein he made the culprit suffer the same fate as his victim. Being drunk is one thing, but to assault an innocent woman and then kill her boyfriend for trying to defend her was seriously messed up. Pete and his buddies should have thanked their lucky stars that John Bernthal wasn't playing the Punisher here, otherwise they would have been given a much more violent treatment without even being allowed to commit the crime. Anyway, after a hectic shootout experience, Lambert allows Pete to survive if he can pull off what Natalie almost managed to do in the freezing wilderness. It comes as no surprise that he failed pretty early and froze to death in a somewhat befitting manner.
I am gonna miss you.
I have something to give you.
30 hours of pain.
Imagine committing a crime so heinous that your victim gets resurrected to make sure you pay for your sins. That's what happened to Top Dollar in the final fight scene from The Crow. Yeah, the 1994 one. I'm not even acknowledging that pathetic remake. Now, I know the direct assailants have already been dealt with, and that was an epic scene in its own right, but Top Dollar was the man for whom those goons had committed such unspeakable acts, so he definitely had to go. I wouldn't take any credit away from him because he did have Eric struggling like crazy, but the way our hero comes back into the fight by transferring 30 hours of pain all at once into his head was a brilliant form of payback. It's quite literally an equal exchange, more so than the punishment given out in the previous entry. And yes, it did well enough to cause Top Dollar to fall to his death on that gargoyle. Man, this was a great villain that they created. It's also a shame that Brandon Lee never got to enjoy the exploits of his efforts. Rest in peace.
All at once! All for you.
I don't know the exact number of powers Carrie White possesses, but I do know that she has enough for people not to mess with her. The bullying that was showcased in this movie isn't something too far off from the truth. This was how schools and colleges would function back in the day, and it even happens in the modern era, albeit on a much smaller scale. Anyway, the reason this entry is at number 15 is because of its sheer brutality and the communication of how certain actions can lead to even harder consequences. Just imagine this. Carrie, a girl who has had nothing go well for her, even with her mother, is finally experiencing something joyful for herself, and then it gets ruined to a level that most wouldn't even be able to fathom. Yes, I'll repeat once again that I'm not sure if Tommy should have died here or simply gotten knocked unconscious, but after what Carrie does after this experience, it's definitely certain that he doesn't survive. The powers that she unleashes and even the change in character that we witness are shocking for sure, and they provide payback to Carrie, although at a tremendously high cost. The whole thing really was tragic to watch, and I miss seeing these kinds of films in today's horror landscape.
Asked you to sit down.
I thought you'd be happy to see us. I guess I was wrong.
You're gonna burn in hell.
Yeah, and after you.
This is a very heavy scene, and even then, I believe Noakes didn't get a good enough punishment for what he'd put John, Tommy, and the boys through back when they were in juvie. The fact that he even tried to dismiss it when he got confronted by John and Tommy in the pub was straight up shameless and ignorant. So yeah, getting shot multiple times may have felt liberating to the ones seeking payback, but I feel Noakes should have been given a much harsher, torturous experience. Not to glorify anything, obviously, but just trying to see things from the perspective of the victims. This stuff follows you around for life. It was a nice touch to let the shooting linger on for a couple of moments extra so that it can sink in for everyone involved. Man, Sleepers is a really top-notch movie which should be kept in the same conversation as some of the other crime films of the 90s. If you haven't watched it already, go ahead and do it now, but only if you don't have a faint heart.
Django Unchained. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello.
Try and try until you succeed isn't just supposed to be some kind of standard motivational quote. It has a lot of applications to all kinds of situations. Just look at Inigo Montoya. He kept saying the same line again and again till he managed to get payback from Ruben for taking his father's life. The overall payback is good for sure, but what really sells it is how Inigo repeats his lines with more conviction each time he has to say them again.
Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Stop saying that!
He also somehow manages to gain strength and skill after repeating himself, almost as if he's giving himself buffs in some video game. Either way, Ruben totally got what was coming to him, and I'd say it was his arrogance and overconfidence that eventually got him defeated. Credit to him too, as this was one of the most iconic sword fights in film history. It's raw, powerful, and emotional too when you understand the stakes that are involved here. Bro wasn't trying to flex or anything, he just felt that this would be the best way to avenge his father. And as someone who's seen this scene dozens of times, I can safely say that he made the right choice. I mean, he even returned all the exact wounds that were dealt to him, making this a precise vengeance as well.
Offer me everything I ask for. Anything you want. I want my father back, you son of
Gabriel, run!
Come!
It's the other way around now, as it's the father avenging his sons in this entry. Jason Isaacs sure has a thing for playing characters that can be hated with a living passion. Lucius Malfoy was a serious pain in the backside, but after I saw William Tarrington in The Patriot, I realized that this dude has had a talent for such roles. After taking the lives of Benjamin's sons, there was no way this dude was going to survive the movie, and Mel Gibson's rage-filled performance only makes the payback more satisfying to watch. The way he smoothly avoids the finishing blow only to give one of his own was a brilliant decision. It made the whole sequence rather enjoyable and provided closure to a father who didn't deserve to lose his sons. Look, I do understand that Tarrington was the better fighter because he had years of training on his side, but when you also happen to be such a shameless monster, there's no other fate waiting for you. If this was supposed to be a fair fight, then I'd say that Benjamin cheated, but considering the motivations for his actions, he definitely deserved the plot armor. That line about his sons being better than him totally gets me every time.
My sons were better men.
He didn't care for glory or credit, all he wanted was payback for taking his children away from him.
Eins.
Mama, du schaffst es.
Zwei. Drei.
Top 10 time has begun, so let's kick it off with an absolute legend of the X-Men universe. Magneto has got the saddest origin story amongst all his characters, and now, after Sebastian Shaw has his mother killed in front of his very eyes, Eric naturally lost all control and got rid of the soldiers who made that happen. I'd call that instant revenge, but what's more important to understand is that the main culprit was always Shaw. Magneto wasn't strong enough to take him on at that time, and he wasn't strong enough decades later either, but this time, he had his buddy Charles Xavier to throw in a mind control assist. This allowed Eric to get the perfect kind of payback wherein his enemy wouldn't taunt him with shameless mind games towards the end. Shaw, who would remain completely motionless, but could hear every word that Magneto was saying to him, so that must have felt really good for Eric. To use the same coin that was given to him all those years ago was certainly diabolical to a degree, but I'd say it was fair considering what Shaw made him go through. All in all, this was a ruthless yet deserved moment for both characters.
3.
Kakatta kina. Omoe kirine.
It's time for some all-out girl power here, although it's actually a savage fight till death between two ladies who are clearly killing machines. Beatrix Kiddo, aka the Bride, definitely wanted to get back at Orenishi for her part in trying to assassinate her at the wedding party. Naturally, this calls for payback, but the Bride made sure to get it in the most badass way possible. Not only did she defeat and kill Oren, but she also took down her own personal army before this, further cementing her status as probably one of the most overpowered female characters in all of cinema. Sure, it was a bit over the top, but when you keep in mind the implications of the fight and how badly the Bride wanted to avenge avenge what was done to her, you tend to keep all of those small formalities aside. Plus, the duel was an epic display of skill and concentration, proving that the ladies can also get it done. And yes, I've already pointed out how Oren mocked the bride by saying she wouldn't last 5 minutes, and it did come true, although with an Uno reverse.
Wake up! I need you to be focused. Where can I find him?
I don't know. Please! I don't know! I don't know! No! Please! Please!
Liam Neeson may not have a daughter in real life, but I'd say that's a good thing for aspiring boyfriends, especially those who've seen Taken. This is actually a story of 2 separate sequences, because there's the kidnappers who took Brian's daughter away from him, and then there's that creepy old dude who wanted to turn her into one of his wives. To me, the more satisfying sequence was when Brian finally came face to face with the dude who spoke to him on the phone. What we go on to witness after this is Brian's version of "I told you so," and it was very much deserved. Yeah, that dude realized he messed up after figuring out that this was the same guy he was taunting over the phone. Then of course, we have the rescue scene where the man pulls off one of the ballsiest moves ever by shooting the threat even as he held Kim as his hostage. That was super badass and elevated Brian Mills to be an elite character. It also must have been so satisfying for the father to have saved and protected his daughter from being forever sent into a brutal, hostile world. Moral of the story, don't trust strangers in a foreign land, or any land for that matter.
Not there. Please.
I believe you, but it's not gonna save you.
Denzel Washington really is one of the GOATs of the TV region. That man is a whole other breed of badass, and for all the right reasons too. After seeing what those shady Russians did to poor little Alina, he decided it was time for some payback, but even then, he actually gave those shameless pricks a chance to let her go without facing any consequences. As one would expect, that's not how things pan out. And I'm really glad for that, because we got to see the super iconic timer scene. The brutality that followed was so epic to watch that you almost forgot that he's doing this as payback for what was done to Alina. Of course, Robert McCall's a lot gorier than the Russians, because he doesn't spare any of them. Plus, he was kind of disappointed in himself that he didn't finish the job in the 16 seconds he predicted it would take. Now that's what I call a real professional. He's always trying to meet his own standards. But seriously, the way Robert goes about killing an entire gang of Russian goons as if he's going out to get some milk from the grocery store was epic to watch. But nothing beats how he stared down his final victim, telling him mercilessly how his life was gonna end. Damn, that one sent shivers down my spine. Yep, there's a reason the OG is at number 5 and its cheap sequel was at 24. You know, Joaquin Phoenix is a pretty nice guy from what I've heard, you know, apart from doing movies like Joker 2, Folie à Deux. However, his most hated role is that of Commodus, and rightfully so, because that dude was a jerk and a half. He not only took the lives of Maximus's family, but also had him tried for treason, which led to a forced life as a gladiator. That's more than enough for Maximus to want payback, which is why the eventual killing of Commodus was so satisfying to watch. This was also helped by the fact that the cowardly ruler tried to gain an unfair advantage by secretly stabbing Maximus before the duel in the Colosseum. That wasn't bad enough, he had a hidden weapon and also tried to get the help of other fighters. Like, bro, just take the L and move on, man. Honestly, it was stuff like this that made me cheer for Maximus even more. He deserved to get payback for what was done to his family. Nobody deserves to go through what Maximus did, and even though he also dies at the end of this sequence, he makes sure he leaves a lasting legacy. Now that's what I call a true soldier. If I hadn't included this on today's video, I'd have never been able to forgive myself. The title in itself suggests a payback sort of plot, and the film had 2 freaking volumes to make its point. After all that drama, the eventual final confrontation was short, sweet, and most definitely badass. The bride had been waiting all this time to finally meet the titular bill after how badly he'd wronged her, and made sure to end things as swiftly as possible. By using the 5-point palm exploding heart technique, not only did she manage to take the life of the man who took everything away from her, she also rubbed it in his face that she got to learn the famed technique his own master refused to teach him. It's the perfect form of payback wherein she's telling him 2 things. First, that he failed to get rid of her, and the second is that she surpassed him in a field that he had truly cherished and valued. Even so, there weren't exactly any rough emotions, but yes, everyone who was following this movie right from volume 1 definitely let out a huge sigh of relief that it was all over.
It's the guy. He's here. He's got a gun in my head.
Let the girl go.
While I do admit that this is an immediate counter to Stansfield's attack, we need to remember why Leon even got himself into such a situation in the first place. All of it was for Matilda. That this is indeed from her goes on to prove that he was getting payback from Stansfield on behalf of her. I always thought of Matilda as Leon's semblance of redemption. He was closed off from everyone for a long time, and when he saved Matilda by letting her in, it was his chance to not hate himself and a chance to maybe start over for the both of them. Most importantly though, Leon wanted to give Matilda a new life without her having to rely on him. His atonement was dying knowing that at least he did one thing right. Yes, it is a very emotional scene with an immense impact, which is what makes it a top entry. Bro was prepared for everything and managed to pull off a sacrifice that would finally give him the closure he was searching for his whole life.
This is from Matilda.
Shit.
Alfie Allen hasn't really been given the best of circumstances in his film roles, hey? In Game of Thrones, Theon Greyjoy didn't have his member, and in John Wick, Yosef didn't have a brain. If you're gonna awaken the Baba Yaga, then you're probably fulfilling some kind of death wish. Heck, I'd have done the same thing if somebody ever took away my dog from me. Payback never felt sweeter, especially in the way John Wick ends Yosef's life without even giving him the chance to talk. He's not at all interested in talking to the kid before shooting him in the head. This only goes to prove that John Wick is a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will. I imagine he would have been a much better choice to go for Thanos' head instead of Thor. He definitely wouldn't have missed. John's footsteps turning to a heartbeat that stomps with the kill shot is an excellent use of sound design too. It's actually a detail I hadn't noticed before. Also, even though he doesn't explicitly say it, Viggo was already grieving the death of his son before it happened, because he pretty much knew it was inevitable. Yeah, this is what happens when you mess with the Baba Yaga. He never fails to get his payback, and knowing his style, it's never a pretty sight.
Oh, that's right. Last time I seen you, you had your hands on my...
You black son of a...
D is silent here, baby.
You know, people don't really give this movie the credit it deserves. Sure, it's not Inglourious Basterds, but it's still a brilliant film with an amazing character arc that culminates into this grand finale. But the final scene where he takes down whatever remains of Candy's legacy is the most badass form of payback. After all, these were the people who kept Broomhilda as a slave, plus Billy definitely didn't show any mercy to Django after he got captured either. So yeah, this is one of the most satisfying payback scenes of all time, which happens to top today's list. I really like Django saying 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 999, 9,999. Earlier, he didn't know how to read or count, but now he's flexing everything he learned. Vocab, gun skills, horse riding, counting. It's a great payoff. And yes, that moment when Steven drops his cane and reveals he isn't a decrepit old man often goes overlooked. He ultimately reveals himself as the mirror of Django in that action. Django triumphed slavery and became a true free man, untethered from fear or animosity. All that ends well, I guess, or should I say, explodes well.
You uppity son of a...
Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video I know you're going to enjoy.